Granny's examination room, semi-annual checkups, and the arrival of Miss Jane. In the golden age of American television, few series captured the gentle collision of rural innocence and urban sophistication with quite the same blend of affection and absurdity as the Beverly Hillbillies. The composite script under consideration opens with a sequence that is pure undiluted Clampett essence, the semi-annual family medical examination conducted by Granny in the cavernous living room of the Beverly Hills mansion. What follows is a master class in character-driven comedy, physical timing, and the quiet celebration of a moral code that remains stubbornly rooted in the hills of the Ozarks even as the family sits surrounded by the trappings of immense wealth. The scene begins with the arrival of Miss Jane Hathaway, the ever-loyal secretary to the Clampett's banker and neighbor Milburn Drysdale. Her entrance is greeted with the warm, unpretentious hospitality that defines the household. "Oh, hi there, Miss Jane. Good morning, Mr. Clapper," comes the first line, already laced with the affectionate mispronunciations that mark the family's speech. Jed Clampett, portrayed with the legendary deadpan grace of Buddy Ebsen, returns the greeting with the measured courtesy of a man who has never forgotten his manners, no matter how many millions now rest in the Commerce Bank. The examination itself is announced with the matter-of-fact pride that Irene Ryan's Granny brings to every one of her self-appointed roles. "You're just in time for a doctor's examination," she declares, and the line is delivered with the authority of a woman who has practiced her particular brand of medicine for decades. Twice a year, we are told, Granny gives everybody a good going over to see that there's nothing wrong with them. The ritual is presented not as a medical necessity in the modern sense but as an act of familial care, a mountain tradition transplanted wholesale into the marble halls of Beverly Hills. Jethro, ever the eager but dim-witted nephew played with boundless physical energy by Max Baer Jr., immediately offers to surrender his place in line. "I'm next, but you can take my turn if you like," he says, revealing both his natural generosity and his perpetual hunger for the next meal. Miss Jane politely declines, explaining that she has come only to have some papers signed, yet the invitation itself underscores the Clampetts' inability to imagine a visitor who might not wish to participate fully in their domestic world. Ellie Mae, portrayed by Donna Douglas with the sweet animal-loving innocence that made her one of television's most endearing figures, emerges from her own examination in a state of comic distress. "Oh, just awful, Miss Jane, really," she confides. "Oh, Granny couldn't find nothing wrong with me. She got all upset." The exchange is a perfect example of the show's gentle satire. In a culture increasingly enamored of medical specialization and the search for hidden ailments, the Clampetts regard perfect health as something of a disappointment. Granny's reaction, offering a dandy salve guaranteed to take the soreness out even when no soreness exists, reveals a worldview in which the healer's duty is to act, not merely to diagnose. "Granny, I ain't got nothing that's sore," Ellie Mae protests, yet the offer of treatment continues. The comedy arises from the mismatch between Granny's mountain certainty and the modern expectation that a clean bill of health is the desired outcome. Irene Ryan's performance in these moments is a study in controlled ferocity. Her voice rises and falls with the cadence of a woman who has never doubted her own authority, while her physical presence, small, energetic, and utterly unself-conscious, commands the vast living room as thoroughly as any boardroom executive of the era. Jed's turn arrives next, and once again the family attempts to rearrange the schedule for Miss Jane's convenience. The banker's secretary, however, insists that she must return to the office at once. The reason she gives becomes the narrative hinge of the entire sequence: Mr. Drysdale isn't feeling well. Granny's immediate response is pure mountain practicality: "Mr. Drysdale is ailing, fetch him over." The line is delivered without hesitation, as though the distance between the Clampett mansion and the Drysdale residence is no greater than the distance between one cabin and the next in the Ozarks. Miss Jane's explanation that it is just a cold and that that's one thing you doctors haven't conquered yet sets up the central comic conflict of the early episodes. Granny's astonishment is absolute. "You mean to tell me the city doctors ain't got no cure for a cold?" The question is not rhetorical. It is the genuine bewilderment of a woman who has lived her entire life believing that every affliction has its remedy if one only knows the proper combination of roots, herbs, and common sense. The historical context of this exchange is worth lingering over. In the mid-1960s, American medicine was riding a wave of unprecedented prestige. The discovery of antibiotics, the development of the polio vaccine, and the increasing specialization of physicians had created an aura of near omnipotence around the medical profession. Yet the common cold remained stubbornly beyond the reach of laboratory science. The Beverly Hillbillies seizes upon this small but significant failure with the mischievous delight of a series that never tired of puncturing the pretensions of urban expertise. Granny's claim that she come up with a cold cure 45 years ago and that it was rolled up in the Razorback Hog Breeders Gazette right on the front page is both a comic exaggeration and a subtle affirmation of rural knowledge systems. The Gazette itself becomes a symbol of the parallel intellectual world that the Clampetts inhabit, a world in which practical experience passed down through generations and recorded in the most unlikely of publications holds equal or greater authority than the peer-reviewed journals of the city. Buddy Ebsen's Jed listens to this exchange with the quiet measuring gaze that defined his performance throughout the series. He does not interrupt, he does not mock. Instead, he becomes the quiet mediator, the man who understands both the mountain wisdom of his mother-in-law and the urban realities represented by Miss Jane. When he promises to take the matter up with Mr. Drysdale, the line carries the weight of a man who has learned to navigate two worlds without ever fully surrendering the values of either. The scene's comedic timing is exquisite. Each offer to rearrange the examination schedule is met with polite refusal. Each refusal is met with further offers of hospitality, and the entire sequence builds with the unhurried rhythm of a family that has never been in a hurry about anything that matters. The physical comedy of the examination itself rewards close attention. Jethro's restless energy, Ellie Mae's mixture of pride and mild embarrassment at having been found perfectly healthy, and Granny's determined application of salve to a patient who insists she needs none, all of these elements are staged with the precision of a well-rehearsed vaudeville sketch. Yet the laughter they produce is never mean-spirited. The audience is invited to smile at the Clampetts' eccentricities while simultaneously admiring the underlying kindness that motivates every action. Granny's medicine may be unorthodox, but her desire to care for her family and her neighbors is absolute. In an era when American society was beginning to fragment along lines of class, education, and geography, the Beverly Hillbillies offered a vision of human connection that transcended those divisions. Miss Jane's presence in the examination room serves as more than a plot device. Nancy Kolb's performance as the banker's secretary was always a masterclass in restrained reaction. Her posture remains upright, her speech remains precise, yet the slight widening of her eyes and the careful modulation of her voice convey a woman who has long since abandoned any hope of fully understanding the Clampett household and has, instead, settled into a permanent state of affectionate bemusement. When she explains that city doctors can only alleviate the symptoms of a cold, her tone carries the quiet authority of institutional knowledge. Granny's counterclaim carries the equally quiet authority of lived experience. The collision of these two forms of knowing is the engine of the comedy, and the writers handle it with a delicacy that allows both perspectives to retain their dignity. As the sequence draws toward its close, the stage is set for the larger conflicts that will occupy the subsequent parts of this composite narrative. Mr. Drysdale's cold Granny's determination to share her cure, the eventual confrontation with the sophisticated Dr. Clyburn, and the later arrival of Tracy Richards, all of these developments grow organically from the simple premise of a family medical examination conducted in a Beverly Hills mansion. The brilliance of the opening lies in its apparent modesty. Nothing about the scene feels forced or contrived. The dialogue flows with the natural rhythm of people who have known one another for years, and the humor arises from character rather than from manufactured situation. In this respect, the sequence exemplifies the best of 1960s situation comedy, an unshakable belief that ordinary human interaction observed with affection and precision can yield endless comic and emotional riches. The cultural significance of such a scene cannot be overstated. At a moment when American television was increasingly populated by urban professionals, secret agents, and suburban families preoccupied with keeping up appearances, the Beverly Hillbillies insisted on the enduring value of rural wisdom, family loyalty, and unpretentious hospitality. Granny's examination room is not merely a comic set piece, it is a moral space in which care is offered freely. Health is measured by more than the absence of symptoms, and the stranger at the door is welcomed as kin. The fact that this space exists inside one of the most expensive mansions in Beverly Hills only heightens the gentle satire. Wealth has not changed the Clampids, it has merely given them a larger stage on which to practice the virtues they brought with them from the mountains. Buddy Ebsen's quiet presence anchors the entire sequence. His Jed is a man who listens more than he speaks, who measures every situation against an internal standard of decency, and who never allows the absurdity of his surroundings to erode his fundamental kindness. When he gently redirects the conversation toward Mr. Drysdale's illness, he does so without diminishing Granny's authority or Miss Jane's professional concerns. The performance is a model of understatement, and it provides the necessary counterweight to Irene Ryan's more flamboyant energy. Together, the two actors create a familial dynamic that feels lived in and authentic, a quality that remains rare in television comedy of any era. The physical environment of the mansion itself becomes a silent character in the scene. The vast living room with its high ceilings and expensive furnishings is treated by the Clampetts as though it was still the front room of a mountain cabin. Chairs are offered, seats are taken, and the examination proceeds with no awareness of the incongruity. This refusal to be intimidated by wealth is one of the series' most consistent and endearing traits. The Clampetts do not reject the material comforts of their new life, they simply refuse to allow those comforts to dictate the terms of their relationships or their values. In the examination room, as in every other room of the mansion, the family's moral code remains intact. As Miss Jane prepares to leave, the seeds of the larger story have been carefully planted. The common cold that city medicine cannot cure, the secret remedy recorded in an obscure agricultural gazette, the determination of a mountain healer to share her knowledge with a suffering neighbor, all of these elements will blossom in scenes that follow. Yet the opening sequence stands complete in itself, a warm, funny, and deeply affectionate portrait of a family that measures success not by the size of its bank account but by the quality of its care for one another and for the world beyond its doors. In an age of increasing specialization and professional distance, Granny's examination room remains a quiet reminder that the oldest forms of healing begin with the simple decision to pay attention, to offer help, and to believe every human being is worthy of a good going over from someone who loves them. The enduring charm of this opening lies in its refusal to condescend. The audience is never invited to laugh at the Clampetts from a position of superior knowledge. Instead, we are invited to laugh with them, to recognize the wisdom that sometimes hides inside apparent simplicity, and to remember that the most sophisticated medical establishments of the 1960s still had no answer for the common cold. Granny's claim that she solved the problem 45 years earlier may be comically overstated, but the underlying point is serious knowledge comes in many forms, and the forms that arise from long experience and careful observation deserve respect even when they appear in the pages of the Razorback Hog Breeders Gazette. In the examination room of the Clampett mansion, that respect is offered freely, and the result is a sequence of pure television joy, rich in character, abundant in humor, and quietly profound in its celebration of human connection.